All right, let's try this again. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this very special presentation on the Green Book Initiative Phase 2. Here today to present on this is Juna Sibany, our fall 2025 intern. Juna's been doing a lot of hard work on this, and today he's going to be focusing on 16 sites that we've lost in the Green Books, and he'll go into it. But we really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us. So I will turn it over to Juna to give his words on this presentation.
Thanks so much for that intro, Emily. Let me just get this slideshow. I'm getting a message that says screen sharing is not turned on. The host isn't allowing it for this webinar.
Oh boy, let's hear it. Let's hear it for tech issues. Okay. Let's see. All right, so claim that as host.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
It's showing up. Yep, looks great.
Great. Thanks so much for the intro, Emily, and welcome everyone to Phase 2 of the Green Book Sites Initiative, and join us as we preserve Buffalo's Black history. Phase 2 research was conducted by me, Juna Sibony, for Preservation Buffalo Niagara. Here's an image of the Michigan Avenue Heritage Corridor, a part of the city that a lot of this presentation is going to be focused on. My name is Juna Sibony, and I'm an environmental design undergrad at the University of Buffalo from Brooklyn. Growing up in Brooklyn, I watched the built environment around me transform over the course of my adolescence, leading me to develop a passion in preservation, architecture, and history. I look forward to pursuing these passions in Buffalo here for the next year and a half and wherever they may take me in the future. I conducted my research with the help of resources like Sanborn Insurance Maps, the Cultural Resource Information Systems, historical aerials, newspapers.com, and local websites and blogs. I put together this presentation of 16 of Buffalo's culturally significant but now demolished Green Book sites. Following my research, I documented the sites as they exist, and all color photography in the slideshow is mine. Just some background about the Green Book. It was a brochure published from 1936 to 1967 by Victor Hugo and Elma Green. The publication was intended to be a resource for African American motorists and travelers, featuring establishments and businesses known for catering to Black clientele. And given Buffalo's rich African American history, Green Book sites here are prevalent. And the Green Book would help Black travelers find things like hotels, taverns, garages, nightclubs, restaurants, service stations, automotive shops, tourist homes like Room and Board and roadhouses, as well as barbershops and beauty salons where their business was appreciated and welcome. This is the cover of the 1940 edition of the Green Book. Green Book Sites Phase 1 was completed by Jacob Saley, the previous intern at PBN, and that consists of the 16 Green Book sites still standing in Buffalo. This is a list of the 16 sites still standing, and I just wanted to place emphasis on them because since they're still standing, unlike most of the Green Book sites in Buffalo, their preservation is especially important. And here's a map of the 16 that are still standing, compiled by Jacob. As you can see, dense concentration on the east side and along Michigan Avenue, which will be evident in my presentation as well. And here's the link to Jacob's presentation on YouTube. And I believe Emily will put that in chat if anyone is interested or hasn't seen that yet. I highly recommend. So we're going to start off my presentation with the Little Harlem, which is arguably one of the most well-documented of the locations on this list. At 494 Michigan Avenue, it was founded by local icon and businesswoman Anne Montgomery in 1910 as an ice cream parlor. By the 1930s, it had expanded into a dinner club and a musical venue with a unique Art Deco interior. And it hosted a variety of musical legends like Billie Holiday and Bing Crosby. Like many other places on this list, the club served as a vibrant cultural and community hub for decades on the East Side and was a favorite meeting place for Black politicians. The club was listed in the Green Book from 1939 to 1961, and throughout that time, the club would become famous for its inclusivity towards the LGBT community and is said to have hosted Buffalo's first drag race. But the club began to see decline towards the end of the 20th century and was sold to Wilbur Trammell, Buffalo's first black city judge. But shortly after this, Buffalo's smartest nightclub, where the color line faded under the stimulus of silk drapes and glittering pianos, was lost to a tragic fire. Here is the site as it appears today, where the Little Harlem once stood, and this should give you an idea of what the block might have used to look like before the tragic fire. Second on this list, we have Dan Montgomery's at 144 Exchange Street. Dan Montgomery's was another well-known club that featured world-renowned artists of colors, and the Buffalo Evening News held Dan Montgomery's to a high standard, calling it the best establishment of its type and a showcase since 1911. Founded in 1907 by Dan Montgomery, it would remain a successful venue and hotel for 80 years before it eventually closed in 1978, and the building was demolished sometime between 1985 and 1995. Now, I included this link to a video documentary on YouTube about waitresses at Dan Montgomery's, where they speak on their experience. I highly recommend giving that a watch as well. Thanks to Emily for putting the link in the chat. There's also a noteworthy comment on the video detailing someone's experience attending the establishment in their childhood. So I highly recommend giving that a watch on your own time. It's very interesting. And here is the lot as it sits today where Dan Montgomery's once stood. And here's how Dan Montgomery's would have appeared back in the day. Next up, we have Mary Talbert's home at 521 Michigan Avenue in what many people consider to be the heart of the African American Heritage Corridor. This was the home of activist Mary Talbert following her move to Buffalo in 1891 until her death in 1923, and served as an epicenter of Buffalo's vibrant Black community. As the home of such a noteworthy figure to the Black community, there were immediate calls to preserve her home following her death, and in 1926, the next door Michigan Avenue Baptist Church, where Talbert had been a member and leader at, led an effort to preserve her home as a shrine to her cause, but that was unsuccessful. At this point, the house was nearly 100 years old. Another attempt came in 1939 when $3,000 was raised towards preservation. But despite these attempts, the home was demolished sometime in the 1950s and remains an empty lot to this day. However, it does have a historical marker, unlike many places on this list. Here's the lot on Michigan Ave next to the Baptist Church, where her house once stood. Next on the list, we have Michigan Avenue YMCA at 585 Michigan Avenue. The Michigan Avenue Y was designed by Buffalo's first professional African-American architect, John Brent, and built between 1926 and 1928. Funding from the institution came from Mr. and Mrs. George Matthews of the Courier Express newspaper, Julius Rosenwald, the owner of Sears Roebuck, Booker T. Washington Fund, and Madam C.J. Walker. The original board of managers consisted of a diverse group of members of the local Black community, including the architect, John Brent, a porter, the pastor of the nearby Michigan Avenue Baptist Church, a judge, and more. And the building hosted youth and young adult events, providing a safe community space as well as housing. The Michigan Avenue Y was listed in the Green Book from 1947 until 1967 and would serve as a beacon to the local Black community for decades, providing housing, education, and recreation until its closure. And the building was ultimately demolished in 1977 and remains an empty lot to this day. And here's how the Y would have once appeared on this bleak, empty lot. Next, we'll take a look at the Moonglow at 460 Michigan Avenue, which was a vibrant club throughout the mid-1900s. They hired people of color by running targeted ads in the newspaper, and the club hosted singer and actress Della Reese's first out-of-town engagement. The club's prime was in the 1930s and 40s, during which it hosted floor shows and dancing for a $1.50 cover charge. It would host comedy events, floor shows, dancing, and more, all of which would be advertised in the Buffalo Evening News. The Moonglow held a spot in the Green Book between 1947 and 1955. and the local club would serve as an opportunity for local up-and-coming musicians for years until its eventual closure. The building that once stood on the corner of Michigan and William, across from the Little Harlem, where the Moonglow is located, was demolished sometime in the 1960s and remains an empty lot to this day. Jamboree at 339 William Street is next on our list, and the tavern was advertised as a great place to make friends. Jamboree would throw nightly parties through the 1930s and continue to do so through the 1950s. Jamboree was known for its lively atmosphere and sometimes a rowdy one, often making the newspaper for a variety of reasons, from simple scuffles and code violations to burglaries and homicides. The Jamboree was listed in the Green Book between 1947 and 1955, and it's unclear when the tavern closed its doors, but the building that housed it remained standing until the early 2000s when the entire block was cleared. Here we have two times that the Jamboree Tavern appeared in local newspapers, um, just discussing a arrest for a burglary at the restaurant and um, another burglary at the restaurant. As you can see, it was a lively place. And today, an empty lot since the 2000s. Pearls at 474 Michigan Avenue is next on our list. Pearls was a tavern located directly adjacent to the Little Harlem and across from Moonglow. This cluster created a vibrant nightlife scene along Michigan Avenue with lots of bars, clubs, and taverns to choose from over the course of a night. The business was owned by Pearl Leopard Nichols and bore her namesake. Pearls held a listing in the Green Book from 1947 until 1955, and the building was eventually demolished in the early 1960s. Today, the lot it stood on is home to a new development that features red and white striped awnings, an obvious homage to the Little Harlem, which stood next door. Here we have the new development at 474 Michigan. As you can see, if you remember the historical image of the Little Harlem, it is a black and white image, but it features those striped awnings that were red and white and are very similar to the ones that you see installed on this new Tim Hortons. So it's nice to know that there is some homage to the Little Harlem on the block, as well as the entire nightlife scene in general. Next up, we'll take a look at Horseshoe at 212 William Street. A few blocks east from the main entertainment strip was the Horseshoe Tavern. The tavern advertised its good food and all kinds mixed drinks regularly in the Buffalo newspapers throughout the 1930s. The establishment was a lively house of music and refreshments and even boasted what they claimed to be the biggest glass in Buffalo. The Horseshoe is known in the community for its holiday parties and was listed in the Green Book from 1947 until 1955. This is the lot where it once stood, next door to the Jamboree. Next, we'll take a look at Arts Lounge at 1164 Jefferson. Arts was a bit more modern than most of the establishments on this list, with records of its operation being from the 1960s. Its listings in the Green Book spanned from 1962 until 1967, and today the site is home to the Jefferson Avenue Apartments, a new development for housing built in 2019. Here's a little ad from a local newspaper advertising the best in drinks and the finest food and the latest jukebox pops at Arts Lounge. Here are the Jefferson Avenue Apartments, which occupy the restaurant's footprint today. Next up, we've got Cloverleaf at 433 Michigan. Cloverleaf was another spot known for its lively atmosphere and often made the newspaper as well for disturbances, even losing its liquor license at one point. The establishment was listed in the Green Book from 1947 until 1955, and it was listed alongside the many other venues and taverns in the lively Michigan Avenue corridor. Now, the places on this list that existed along the Michigan Avenue corridor tended to be a more upbeat and lively type of establishment, whereas the ones further out into the neighborhood were more relaxed taverns and restaurant type of places. Here's the lot where it stood, which has been a parking lot for decades. Another very dramatic contrast. Next up, we'll take a look at Sperry's Tan Tempo Lounge at 757 Michigan Avenue. Nicholas Sperry took over the tavern that had existed on the site since at least 1943 in the 1950s. The venue advertised live music throughout the 1950s until its closure in the 1960s. It was subsequently demolished to make way for the Kensington Expressway, and today its footprint sits in the shadow of the 33 overpass. Business remained in the Green Book until its final issue, even though demolition of the Michigan Avenue corridor had begun years prior. So it seems that the publishers of the Green Book had not done adequate research on which establishments were still operating in the area because Sperry's was listed in the Green Book for years after its demolition. And here we have an ad advertising Little Nate and his Rockin' Hi-Fis, as well as Sylvester Page at the exciting Sperry's Tan Tempo Lounge. And today, we have the 33 overpass. No signs of this tavern's existence. The contrast in the liveliness of these establishments with what stands in their place today is very dramatic. Next up, we've got Apex at 311 William Street. The establishment was not owned and operated by members of the African American community like many other places on this list. However, it was operated by well-known Jewish merchants Samuel and Benjamin Kariser. Apex Restaurant was located in a handsome cast iron clad building, and the establishment was well known for catering to Black patrons, made clear by its listings in the Green Book. Apex was listed in the Green Book from 1947 until 1960, and it appears to have been demolished in 1960. Here's where it stood near the Michigan Avenue corridor. Again, an empty lot today. Here we have Polly's at 483 Jefferson Avenue. Polly's was advertised as a fine place to meet friends. The tavern advertised home-cooked meals as well as beers, wines, and liquors at moderate prices, as seen in this advertisement. Polly's was listed in the Green Book from 1947 until 1952, and this establishment was a little ways off the main drag, located in a more residential area, providing a more relaxing atmosphere than some of the lively clubs on Michigan Avenue. Today, the site is occupied by two fairly new construction homes. Pine Grill at 1443 Jefferson Avenue was listed as a restaurant. However, the establishment often hosted live music and was regarded as one of the many local venues considered safe for Black performers. The venue hosted the likes of Bo Diddley and Gladys Knight, along with many others. And to this day, the Pine Grill Jazz Reunion meets yearly at MLK Park. Today, the site is a parking lot. Here we have some advertisements for Pine Grill as well as a newspaper article describing happenings at the establishment. Here's the parking lot that occupies the site today. Next, we'll take it the Elite/Elks Lodge 119 at 171 William Street. The Elite restaurant was located in the hall of Elks Lodge 119. Information about this establishment is scarce, as it moved several times, along with the fact that it existed within another establishment. It was listed in the Green Book as 171 William Street, and it is evident that a restaurant catered towards Black diners operated out of the local Elks Lodge 119. Again, information about this site is hard to come by, but its inclusion in the Green Book alone is a testament to its relevance and importance within the Black community. Today, the site is home to more new construction homes. Here we have Empire at 454 Michigan Avenue, which was a buffet-style restaurant that operated from 1916 until 1962. It was owned by a number of people over the years, including Max Curran, who also owned Apex at one point. The building unfortunately suffered a fire in 1962, and would close its doors soon after. However, it was still in good condition, but the site was demolished as a result of a contractor error in 1965. Here we have a clipping from a newspaper describing a robbery at Empire Restaurant. And today, another empty lot along the once vibrant Michigan Avenue. As you can see here, we have the red and white awnings of the new development in homage to the Little Harlem. So hopefully that gives good perspective as to how densely packed this strip once was with clubs and taverns. And that wraps up our list of 16 of Buffalo's demolished Green Book sites. Here we have a comparison of Michigan Avenue then and now. Here we have Michigan Avenue on both slides, and you can see the stark contrast in the density that once occupied this street to the many parking lots and empty lots that dot it today. It's very dramatic and somewhat troubling to see the removal of these once vibrant establishments catered towards patrons of color as well as artists of color, and their replacement with infrastructure such as the 33 overpass or simply parking in empty lots. I find this image to be very dramatic, and I encourage letting it sit for a moment. And we'd like to extend our utmost gratitude to the Erie County Bar Association for making this presentation possible, and to supporters like you who continue to make projects like this possible with your generous contributions. If you appreciate projects like this, please consider becoming a member today. Your membership is essential to making our work possible. Visit Ways to Give, Preservation Buffalo Niagara, for more ways to give, or scan the QR code below. Thank you. And please, if there are any questions, now's the time. Ask away.
Yes, please type all questions in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. Well, Juno would be happy to answer them. Juno, we would really like to thank you for the hard work and dedication you put into researching each and every one of these important sites to Buffalo history and Black history in general. I think you really brought to life a lot of the places that now are no longer standing. So we really thank you for your research.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Well, we got one hand up. Let's see, Miss Shanna. Let's see if I can get you in here. Oh, and Elaine. All right, ladies. We have our Q&A popping up. Okay, so if you could put your questions either into the chat or in the Q&A. We did have one question of when will the replay be available? I missed most of it, unfortunately, but enjoyed what I saw. Yes, we will, just with Jacob's presentation as well, we will put Juna's presentation onto YouTube, so you can go back through and listen to the ones that you may have missed or give it a rewatch. This is a lot of valuable information, and even Juna packing it 16 into 16 sites that were super densely packed with history into just, a half an hour is really hard to do. So give it a rewatch. We'd be happy to put that on YouTube, probably, I'm going to guess, by the mid of next week. I do have everybody's emails in here, so I'll make sure to send out an email of when that link is live. All right, Shanna. Oh, Shanna, you joined us in part one. The owner of Moonglow. So yes, we did do some research into that. I don't have it available on me right now, but if you don't mind, I will shoot you an email about this after this webinar, and we could chat a little bit about that. We're always digging for new history on everything. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Juna, I wonder if you could answer this one. Was there a process or criteria for being listed in the Green Book?
The criteria for being listed in the Green Book was simply if your establishment was regarded as being one that patrons or performers of color were safe at. Um, I don't know if there was a direct application, but there was a process of including establishments in this book that the baseline criteria was if your establishment or business catered to black patrons and if they would be safe there.
Yeah, very important, especially at the time when transportation was just ramping up and throughway systems were being put into place, or other transportation modes were being put in place. And to put emphasis on it, um, it was almost not safe for Black Americans to travel and go stay at a hotel or go stop at a gas station. So these were not just like places for Black people to patronize, but they were sanctuary spaces that ensured safe travel, which was essential.
Yeah, this was an incredibly essential piece of any road trip conducted by African American people in the mid 1900s. This would give them the opportunity to map their trip with stops along the route that were listed in the Green Book where they knew they would be welcomed and they would be safe. And it was really a necessary and essential resource to Black travelers at the time.
Jenny asks, were there any new buildings promised at demolition of the Green Book sites that we were talking about?
Not
Um,
that I'm aware of. As mentioned, there was an effort following Mary Talbert's death to preserve her building, her home, due to its significance to the community. But aside from that, there really wasn't any effort to rebuild, aside from the new development on Jefferson in Michigan, I believe, that features the red and white awnings in homage to the Little Harlem. But besides that, not that I know of. And I'm sorry if I cut you off, Emily,
oh, no, absolutely. I'm happy to have your
if you have it.
answer.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of the time that isn't the case, to where there is infill planned for demolition. In these cases, I mean, there might have been somebody wanted to demolish them and in hopes of putting something in, and maybe financing fell through or plans weren't approved. So there is quite a possibility, but nothing like in the research suggests that. Um, and that's like kind of why we emphasize local landmarking, because that's like our highest defense against needless demolitions that generally lead to parking lots. So that's why we're really heavy on the local landmarking front as opposed to really any other, like national trust, like national register listing, things like that, which necessarily don't protect against those needless demolitions, to hopefully not see any more of these empty lots in the future. But Juna did, these first 16. There's probably, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at math. I'm a history girl. There's probably like 98 some odd sites to go that were demolished. Um, and that's the worst part because it's demolishing Black history. It's demolishing these Buffalo history. And it's really hard to see because a lot of the times you're going to find as we move through these phases that they have not been replaced. And it's very hard to see in Juna's images where it shows a building and then a lot. To me, it was very powerful that he did that because it really just shows what was once there, making us a culturally vibrant city, to the utmost effect.
Yeah, just to go off what Emily just said, the fact, I think it's worth noting that the fact that most of these sites exist to this day as empty lots or underpasses or parking lots goes to show how unnecessary the demolition of these sites was and how the 1960s, the urban renewal that occurred really was just urban removal and the displacement
A
of this
great
black
point.
community, this vibrant black community along Michigan Avenue that has been reduced to parking lots.
Shanna asks, do you find that a lot of these locations were demolished when the 33 was put in?
Yes, yes, the majority of these locations were demolished in the 1960s. Um, a couple of them, like Sperry's Tantempo Lounge, were actually in the footprint of the 33, but the construction of the Kensington Expressway, the 33, speaks to a greater trend at the time of, like I said, urban removal rather than urban renewal. So even if they weren't directly in the 33's footprint, they were still part of a greater movement at the time to restructure and reform Buffalo and downtown.
And most unfortunately affecting generally Black neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
We got Don asks, do you know at the time of demolition, were there plans for these spaces or were they just part of the clearance? We did
For the
answer that
most
a
part,
little bit,
yeah.
Don. Yeah, but
For the
after
most
you,
part, just part of the clearance.
yeah, it's really sad to say. And that's still common practice to this day is like a demolition by neglect. Now, I don't know the state of some of these while they were being demolished, if they were in ill repair to the point of needing demolition. But most of the time, that's not the case. But that's what happened. They were just demolished with no plans for the future. That kind of ties into what Jenny asked. She said, did the buildings need to be derelict to be demolished, or what was the political motivations behind these demolitions?
Yeah, yeah, like we've touched on a couple times, I would say the political motivation to demolish these buildings was restructuring Buffalo's urban form. It's a phenomenon that took place in almost every other American city, where downtowns and dense, vibrant areas were split up and cleared to accommodate car-centered infrastructure like highways and parking lots, to ease the travel between downtowns where people worked and suburbs where people had begun to move. The dense urban areas that were some of the most vibrant and culturally significant areas in cities were completely disregarded for the car.
Kay asked, were artifacts removed from the buildings before demolition? If so, where were they stored? Are they available for viewing anywhere?
I wasn't able to find any evidence that that happened, and I think it's pretty safe to assume that it didn't.
That's a safe assumption, and that's a common practice in most cases, Kay, that artifacts go down with the building. Um, at at that point, buildings become unsafe because they're demo prepping. So people can't really come in and salvage. We've seen it kind of happen at Brick Bar, which was a super, it was from a fire, not just a needless demolition, but well, kind of, but anyway. But people, it was really hard for like the history museum to even be able to go in there to salvage some artifacts like that because it was considered an unsafe situation. So as we know, no, there is no Green Book Museum like artifacts stored in the Green Book Museum.
Yeah, I'm curious to know though if any community members hold artifacts that they may have removed on their own private accord, prior or post the establishment's closures. I'm sure there's definitely someone out there with a piece of the Little Harlem or another establishment like that.
That's a great point,
So
Juna. And if anybody
if you're
knows
out
where these
there,
went,
if you're
yeah.
out there and you're hearing this, let us know, please.
Jenny asks, do you have are there any plans for the remaining Green Book buildings? Yes. So we are kind of what started this initiative was a meeting with Terry Alford and the Michigan Street African American Heritage Corridor, and with the councilwoman. Oh, I'm so sorry for this noise at the time. With our councilwoman Leah Halton Pope, who really noticed that the Green Book sites were very neglected and that there was no signage for them and no honoring them. So that's what really prompted this whole initiative to begin. And that's why the research that June has done, that Jacob has done, and even their predecessor, I think his name was Connor, started, is really very important because we're going to try to shed light on them. It's sad that there's a lot of lots to show right now, but even then, to get a marker to signify, hey, we were here, it was important, we're history, I think is necessary.
Absolutely.
All right, and this is a good one for you, Juna. Callie asks, were some of these buildings leased but owned by someone else? Did the land ownership change after demolitions?
That's a great question. I'm not completely sure about the specifics for most of these establishments. I know a lot of the establishments themselves were in fact owned by members of the Black community. A couple of them were owned by members of other communities, but still were regarded as establishments that catered to uh, people of color. Um, as far as the Little Harlem, after the club's decline, it was sold to a city judge who took ownership. And I think he planned on keeping it open and continuing its tenure as an active establishment. But following his purchase of the building, there was a tragic fire that led to the building's demolition. So, in terms of land ownership changes after demolition, a lot of the sites along Michigan Avenue, the parking lots and things like that are currently just owned by local small industry companies that occupy buildings along there and they use them as storage or parking for their trucks or things like that. So, following demolition, some of the sites they took eminent domain, like with the 33 and Sperry's Tan Tempo Lounge, that was taken over by the city to build the highway. And a lot of the clubs along Michigan Avenue, their sites are now owned by local small industry businesses.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And that's what I find as well. So, yes, unfortunately, while they're gone, I really do appreciate you bringing them to light, Juna, and bringing them back to life today. I think that was a really great presentation and really gave us insight onto what could have been along the Michigan Ave corridor and along William Street, and what could have been if the 33 didn't come in and urban renewal wasn't so heavy. What could have been if we preserved a little stronger and a little bit more intensely. Um, but that's why we have 16 remaining. So that's why we're doing these in batches of 16. There are 16 Green Book sites remaining to this day. And I have the link in the chat if you want to see the presentation on that, or even if you just want to go to our website under the special, I don't even know what that is, technicalities tab, special projects tab. You'll see the Green Book initiative that really says why we're doing this, how we got involved. And yeah, you can learn a little bit more there. And Shanna, absolutely. I'll make sure I do have your email because you signed up for this webinar. I will send you an email right after this so we can get in touch because that's very important. And thank you for doing your research on the moon glow, Shanna. I really appreciate that. I think the more people that can get their eyes on these sites and really bring the history out, colored history hasn't always been as well represented as white history. So I think the fact that we can go, we can pull it out and make sure everybody knows about it is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Um, Jenny agrees with us that it would be great to find some amazing artifacts if in the community. It would be an amazing foundation, a museums of sorts, and to further preservation. Yeah, Jenny, if we can make that happen, if anybody, again, call to action, ask around if you know of anybody that might have these artifacts. I do know that the Michigan Ave Heritage Corridor would be very interested in something like this, as well as the Majority Leader Hall and Pope. I think there's a lot of effort behind it. Of course, PBN is very important and essential. All right. And does anybody have any other questions? We're looking pretty good. And if anybody does think of anything after this, I'll be sending along a thank you email. So you'll have my information, and I'll make sure you guys get the YouTube link so that way you can rewatch, or if you can, please share it. It's very important that we get the word out, and keep your eye out for a very interesting phase 3 that we were just contacted about yesterday. That might involve the central terminal. So there will be more phases coming to this because this history has not been brought to light, and it needs to be. And thank you, Juna. Great job.
Thank you. Thanks so much to PBN for this opportunity. I'm really grateful for it, and I really enjoyed doing this project. It was a really amazing opportunity to get my feet on the ground in Buffalo and learn about this great city. And thank you to you all for making this possible as well.